Marcus Blythe hadn't always been the face of controversy, but ever since the Jasmine Crockett interview backfired and Ibrahim Traoré's name began echoing through academic halls, every word he spoke was watched, dissected, and weaponized. And yet, here he was smiling again, in full command of his polished arrogance, as if none of that history existed, as if the world hadn't already begun turning away from voices like his. The studio hadn't forgotten. It had simply chosen to gamble. Traoré's name trended for weeks after his quiet dismantling of Rosie O'Donnell after the Senate hearing where silence was louder than protest. But Marcus believed he could steer the narrative back, reclaim control. That belief, unfortunately, for him, was built on borrowed time. Across the city, old segments of past interviews blinked silently on paused monitors. A producer stared at the screen, chewing a thumbnail, rewatching the moment Jonathan Rumi had quietly said, "Men with power rarely realize when they've lost the room." That same room was now housing a new confrontation. The difference? This wasn't Hollywood. This was international stagecraft wrapped in studio lights. The stakes had changed. The tone had not. Ibrahim Traoré said in stillness, not out of discomfort, but design. His reputation, built slowly across West Africa and reinforced in diaspora circles, wasn't born from media tricks. It came from moments like this, where calm crushed ego, where dignity dismantled performance. And as the segment resumed, the entire room seemed to feel it, the weight of something slipping out of Marcus's control. "Let's be clear," Marcus said, with a laugh designed to comfort himself, not the audience. "This isn't about race or colonization or all those buzzwords people throw around. This is about stability, and you, Captain, represent a threat to that stability." Traoré blinked slowly. The pause was deliberate. "Whose stability?" he asked gently. "Yours." There were no applause signs, no cues for laughter, just silence, dense, raw, and honest. Even the cameraman's hands seemed tighter on the rig. Traoré didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture, but his presence filled the room in a way Marcus never could. Not with all his practiced outrage and perfectly timed headlines. The captain wasn't there to win. He was there to remind them of what had been erased, twisted, mocked, and to remind Marcus that not all silence meant weakness. Behind the glass, a legal team began texting each other. One associate typed, "He's baiting him intellectually." Another replied, "This isn't going to end on air." What the audience didn't know, what even Marcus didn't know, was that Traoré had come prepared. Not with insults, not with aggression, but with a file. A folder passed hand to hand across continents. Names, footage, internal memos. A single clip that would render every one of Marcus's past reports indefensible. But that wasn't for now. Now was for stillness. Now was for restraint. Now was for letting Marcus speak himself into collapse. And he almost did. One final dig. "You speak of empires collapsing, but the only one collapsing lately is yours. Africa isn't your stage, Captain. It's a cautionary tale." Traoré didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just said, "Then you should listen more carefully. Caution speaks softly." The segment ended. The red light faded. But in that moment, 1,000 silent voices, those ignored, deleted, buried, began to rise, and Marcus didn't know it yet, but this was no longer his story. The leak wasn't accidental. It was coordinated. The USB passed through quiet hands: an ex-intelligence officer, a retired journalist, a young Burkinab activist in Brussels who'd memorized every frame of the unaired footage. None of them spoke publicly. They didn't need to. The contents of that drive would speak for them. But for now, the truth remained held in a timed release, synced to coincide with Marcus's most anticipated segment, a televised report aiming to dismantle the image of Traoré as anything more than a manufactured messiah. What Marcus didn't know, what he never considered, was that the messiah was not built by cameras, but by scars the lens had never captured. The story Marcus pitched had always been the same. He framed it with phrases like journalistic duty and unfiltered reality, but behind closed doors, he crafted caricatures. The proud elder made to look confused, the resilient women portrayed as submissive, the silence of soldiers edited into implied guilt. None of it was new. None of it was questioned until now. Until that single phrase from an anonymous crew member went viral. "He just didn't kneel." It was a small sentence, quiet, but it cracked open memory. People began digging. Forums compared stills from Marcus's Burkina documentary to raw, previously unseen photos from local sources. In one infamous segment, Marcus stands in front of a village well, describing the scene as abandoned, but a leaked image shows children fetching water behind the camera. Another clip labeled "Refugees" is revealed to have been staged using local actors paid to look distressed. Meanwhile, Traoré remained silent, not defensive, not reactive, silent. And it was that silence, once again, that unnerved the media, more than any rebuttal could. When asked in passing by a BBC correspondent why he hadn't addressed the allegations head-on, he simply said, "History never argues. It waits." But others began to speak. Lydia, the whistleblower whose warnings were buried, uploaded a thread at midnight, screenshots of internal emails, meeting notes where Marcus's misconduct was downplayed, a memo from a network executive, stating, "Let him be provocative, it sells." The thread garners millions of views within hours. #surface, #silent scars, #expose Marcus, just as a retired network editor anonymously leaks a final nail, the travel logs. Receipts showing Marcus's team left Burkina Faso just hours after the elder's daughter disappeared, despite their original itinerary showing 2 more days scheduled for filming. No follow-up, no mention on air, no acknowledgement. Just one more untold story left in the dust. At the same time, a small podcast run by African scholars uploads a deep dive titled "The Manufacturing of a Menace." In the episode, a panel dissects the tactics used to frame Traoré as unstable. They never debated his ideas, one speaker says. They attacked his tone, his clothes, his pauses. Because truth delivered calmly terrifies those built on noise, even in the United Nations corridors, the ripples are felt. A memo circulates titled "Concerning Narratives in International Reporting." In it, Traoré is referenced not as a destabilizing force, but as a symbol of unyielding sovereignty. That shift in language signals more than sympathy, it marks realignment. Marcus, unaware of the storm brewing behind the digital curtain, sits in his dressing room rehearsing lines. He's holding cue cards for a segment titled "The Fallacy of Revolution." His assistant mentions rising chatter online. He waves it off. They'll move on. They always do, but this time the silence doesn't fade. It festers, grows. The countdown begins. 24 hours until the folder drops. Inside, the unaired footage, the hotel bar recording, internal legal memos, and a forgotten photograph Marcus shaking hands with a private contractor later convicted of bribery charges in West Africa. That image alone will set fire to the illusion of his integrity. Somewhere across the ocean, Traoré receives a quiet text. The clock is set. He places his phone down, walks outside into the golden Sahel sun, and watches schoolchildren run across a field bearing his country's flag, not for spectacle, but for belief. And as night descends, the world sleeps unaware that by tomorrow everything will change. Not with thunder, not with rage, but with a whisper the empire never saw coming. Across every continent, screens flicker in real time. Airports, CAFs, classrooms, government offices all locked onto the same feed. The network doesn't open with music or branding. Just the stark, jolting headline, "Breaking leaked." Footage undermines integrity of lead journalist. The anchor's voice is steady but brittle, as if each word weighs heavier than the last. Marcus Blythe sits beside her, no script in hand, no smirk on his face. The glare of the studio lights reflects off his forehead as his eyes scan the teleprompter, then drop, knowing it holds nothing that can save him now. One by one, the clips begin to roll. The slap crackling audio, blurred faces, undeniable intent. A translator flinching mid-sentence. A younger Marcus leaning in, barking, "Stick to the script, or I will." The laughter in the hotel bar follows. Mandela in a beret echoes through the speakers like a weapon finally turned around. The final clip lands hardest, a former crew member's recorded statement. "He told us to fake the hunger levels. He made us place props FLIs, empty bowls, fake tears. He said, give the world what it expects to see." The newsroom remains dead quiet. No commentary. Just Marcus, breathing unevenly, visibly shrinking. His earpiece crackles. Static. Then nothing. The director has cut comms. No one wants their voice associated with his anymore. Simultaneously, the feed switches. A press conference hall. Standing at a podium clean, unbranded, intentionally neutral is Ibrahim Traoré. No military regalia, just a pressed black jacket and an expression that betrays neither anger nor satisfaction, only gravity. I was called many things. He begins, a radical, a threat, a strongman. His tone is precise, each syllable sharpened by years of restraint. But I learned early when people like me speak calmly, you call us dull. When we speak with fire, you call us dangerous. And when we speak with facts, you cut the feed. A ripple through the press corps. Pens pause mid-scratch. Someone coughs nervously. The camera zooms in, capturing Traoré's eyes, tired, clear, unflinching. They didn't lie because they feared me. They lied because I refused to perform. One journalist blurts out a question. Captain, do you want revenge? Traoré's silence stretches, so long it almost becomes an answer in itself. Then softly, no, I want memory. That's more dangerous. The line slices through the room. Journalists exchange glances. Hashtags are already forming. Back on the network, a pre-recorded apology is cued. Marcus, shot earlier that evening, stares dead into the lens. I deeply regret any, he begins, but the tone is off. Every word tastes like strategy, not sorrow. Misunderstandings that may have resulted from my past conduct. The internet does not forgive the hollow phrasing. A drowning. Man apologizing to the ocean. One tweet reads, not because he's sorry, but because he knows the tide has turned. Later that night, a special follow-up interview is aired on a rival station. Marcus sits across from a calm, sharp interviewer. She wastes no time. Do you believe you were racist? She asks directly. He blinks, swallows. I didn't mean, he stammers. She leans forward. You were trained not to. No. Answer. Just silence. Longer than any previous silence in his career. No producer in his ear now. No applause. Just the sound of something unraveling beneath his tailored suit. Somewhere across the world, in a small CAF in Ghana, two students sip tea and rewatch the press conference. One says, he didn't have to yell. That's what made it hit harder. The other nods. He made history without raising his voice, and far from the cameras, in an office lined with press credentials and once awarded trophies. Marcus sits alone, watching himself on delay, watching what he once controlled slip away, not in fire, not in fury, but in the quiet, methodical collapse of his own myth. Outside, protesters carry placards that don't bear slogans of vengeance. They bear quotes. Memory is more dangerous. They cut the feed. Truth doesn't shout. And inside every newsroom, every institution that once hailed Marcus as untouchable, producers and editors now face a different kind of silence, the kind that asks, how long have we been part of this lie? The broadcast ends, not with a statement, not with credits, just a fade to black. The screen that once made Marcus untouchable now refuses to show his face. His name, once a fixture on prime-time banners and best-selling bylines, has faded into digital purgatory. Streaming platforms quietly remove his specials. His documentaries, once praised as raw and fearless, are quietly recategorized or deleted. On Instagram, his last post sits untouched, an aerial shot of a village in Burkina Faso captioned "Where Truth Lives." The comments beneath it tell a different story. You stole their stories. Where's the girl who disappeared? Say her name. Notifications no longer ping. They echo. He spends most days behind drawn blinds, lit by nothing but the glow of his laptop. One morning, by chance or irony, Autoplay delivers him a live stream of uncut truth. The host is confident, fluid, her accent West African, her questions sharp. We were once muted in our own narratives, she says. Her guest nods. It's the translator from that suppressed clip, now introduced as award-winning author and survivor of media erasure. Marcus leans forward instinctively, as if ready to interrupt. But there is no MIC, no cue, just truth, delivered without him. He opens his photo archive. Image after image of him in villages he never understood, flanked by children whose names he never learned, arms slung over shoulders for the perfect humanitarian pose. He clicks on one, tries to write a caption. He pauses, erases, closes the app. There's no apology that can hold now. No sentence strong enough to rebuild what he spent years tearing down. Thousands of miles away, in Ouagadougou, Traoré visits a school rebuilt with quietly reallocated funds, a project never broadcast, never branded. He moves without entourage or slogan. In the courtyard, children spill out laughing. A girl runs up, camera in hand. Why don't you smile in photos? She asks. He kneels gently. Because not every fight is over, he replies, then after a beat, but one day, I will, she beams anyway. Reverberations ripple slowly but firmly through global media. One agency appoints a black woman as head of content ethics. Another publishes a full-page print apology not to Traoré, but to the people they misrepresented. A prestigious journalism school unveils its new curriculum, Narrative Accountability in Conflict Zones. Among the footnotes is a name once forgotten, Lydia Menza. Her scholarship will now sponsor young journalists from exploited regions. The tagline beneath it reads, "Report with truth or not at all." One evening, under the open sky of Accra, a crowd gathers in a town square. A projector beams onto the stone walls of an old post office turned cultural hub. Traoré's recorded voice floods the square. They tried to silence us with microphones, he says, calm as ever. But truth doesn't need volume, just persistence. The crowd applauds softly, not with the excitement of a spectacle, but with the reverence of memory. Among them, in the very back, Marcus stands. No hat, no disguise, only obscurity. People pass by, brush shoulders. No one recognizes him. No one cares. He is not part of the story anymore. And for the first time in his life, that feels right. He doesn't speak. He doesn't post. He listens. The projector flickers. A final quote appears beneath Traoré's image, etched against the stone like scripture. The world doesn't change with noise. It changes when silence finally speaks. Marcus stares at it for a long time. And then he walks away, not toward a studio or a screen, but into a silence he no longer fears, because now he understands what it means.